we'll get started. So welcome, everyone. My name is Jasheet Singh. I'm the Director of Programs here at California Change Lawyers, and I am joined by our Executive Director, Chris Poonambayan. And we're really excited to talk to you about a bit about the Legal Empowerment Fund in this webinar today. We're really excited to see so many of you joining and all the excitement that's been built around this. So we're going to actually jump right in. The way I'll put this format is we'll go slide by slide. I want to try to address any questions that might come up right away. So I'll pause for a few seconds after each slide to see if you have any questions. And beyond that, we'll also have time at the end to do a Q&A. Most of this will be informational. I will log in to the submittable account to kind of showcase how to apply for the Legal Empowerment Fund and some of the questions that you will see. And then, like I said, we'll open up at the end for Q&A. All right. So I think it's always great to start off with who we are. Many of you obviously know of us, but I think it's always a great way to start by kind of talking about our mission statement. So California Change Lawyers is a statewide foundation whose mission is to build a better justice system for all Californians. We seek to empower the next generation of lawyers, judges, and activists to create a more diverse legal profession, a fair justice system, and a better California. We believe that a state as diverse as California should have a justice system led by advocates of all.
I'm going to put this so it won't bother you, and I'll just put.
It's all good. And I'll just state real quick, if you do have questions, you can either use the chat function and write a question there, and then I think we're gonna have to unmute or ask you to unmute yourself, or just kind of put up an emoji and I'll try to get to you during the session. So the fund itself. So the Legal Empowerment Fund adopts a broad-based approach to help organizations harness the power of lawyers for good, contribute to movements for social change. So the fund was actually created as a response to the deepening public consciousness about the importance of law on social justice issues and the need for lawyers of all backgrounds to rise to the challenges posed by the ongoing racial reckoning and the lack of equal justice under the law. I want to clarify that for us, this is a pilot program. We are really excited about this. I'm really excited to have you all possibly apply to this fund. But the intention here is to learn. We're here to learn. We're here to learn from you, learn about the communities and the organizations doing the work. And then our hope is also to grow this fund and grow this work through increased partnership over time. So what do we want to impact? We envision that these grants are supporting organizations working on diversity, equity, inclusion, leadership development, eviction prevention, deportation defense work, wage theft, environmental law, health justice, and much, much more. Like I said, we're looking for you to help us learn about the work that needs to be done in the communities. We envision the fund supporting a wide range of modalities, from community education to litigation to direct services and to policy advocacy. So the through line is that all grantees will harness that power of lawyers for good and contribute to movements for social change. And I'll pause real quick to see if anyone has any questions. All right. So a bit about the funding that's available and how we're envisioning this. So we have about $470,000 available across all strategies. As we said, we are working to grow this fund. Hopefully we're able to do that. And the grant duration right now is a one-year grant. There's a possibility of at least 1 year renewal, but this will not be a multi-year grant. As I said, this is a pilot program we've just launched. The grant amounts themselves, so those of you who are familiar with our legal fellowship program, there's two actual leadership pathways. We have a leadership pathway that is kind of a continuation of our legal fellowship program. So we'll have roughly $160,000 in that, which will work to provide two grants of $80,000 each to support a year-long fellow at each organization. For all the other priority areas, we're looking at a maximum of a $50,000 grant. This is the max that you can propose. I just want to state that we don't intend to alter the grant amount that you asked from us. So please request the amount that you truly need. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but those are the two differences. If you're applying for anything other than the Leadership Pathway Legal Fellowship Program, the maximum amount is $50,000. All right. So what are we funding? This graphic can be found on the actual web page through the RFP and FAQ page, but I just put up here one more time, just kind of walk through it with you all. The priority areas, as we've stated, are movement lawyering, capacity building, and leadership pathways, which, as I just said, has two kind of sub pathways. We have the general leadership track and the legal fellowship track. So I'll kind of start with movement lawyering. What we're looking for, and at least the goal is to strengthen the model of social change that is premised on the integration of law and community organizing. We have a list of outcomes here. I'll be very clear that you don't have to address each outcome. We are looking to see, and we don't expect you to address each of these outcomes, but these are some of the outcomes that we think could come about through this priority area. So we have one outcome that lists for more fair and equitable laws or policies, either created or implemented. Another outcome that says more community members are served and more favorable case outcomes are achieved due to the increased access to diverse lawyers. And last but not least, a strengthened ecosystem for the next generation of movement lawyers. For capacity building, the goal is to increase the likelihood for smaller, diverse legal organizations to thrive. Very specifically, if you're applying to the capacity building grant, your organization will need to have under a $1 million budget. You must have at least one staff attorney in your organization, and you must be based in California. The outcomes listed here in no particular order again are greater stability and longevity of and/or innovation in diverse legal organizations. And then the other one is incubation of newer organizations led by diverse lawyers and/or with diverse lawyers on staff. And I do see a question from Cindy. Is capacity building focused on organizations providing legal services? Yes. So the goal here is to build up the capacity of organizations who are providing legal services. So legal organizations who are at that next step of making the jump to support the communities in a larger capacity. So the third priority area is leadership pathways. The goal here is to build on-ramps into law and tracks into positions of power. I'll just mention off the offset that both California Changers has a long-running diversity pipeline grant program and continues to have a legal fellowship program as listed in outcome B. If you are a diversity pipeline grantee of ours, we do envision you applying possibly to the general leadership track, which is seen in outcome A, unless you see yourself applying into one of the other priority areas. And then if you are a current, past, or even a new organization seeking to work on leadership work, this is where we envision you applying. And then again, the outcome B is the legal fellowship program, which has been ongoing for a couple of years now, very successfully, and has been funding opportunities for recent law school grads or young early career attorneys to pursue careers in public interest and help organizations grow from that perspective. So we have another question for movement lawyering. Would using the funds to support a lawyer from an underrepresented group make an application more competitive? Using the funds to support a lawyer from Let's see if Chris has any thoughts on this. I'm gonna go back through this.
Hi, Joshua. Thanks for asking that question. I think we're going to look at like the total application. So I wouldn't say outright that there's anything that you could do that would make the application more competitive. But that being said, you'll see when we look at the application itself that we are asking all the organizations, regardless of the priority, to demonstrate your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if this is the way that you believe that you would have a strong application, then please do indicate as much if that's in fact what you have in mind. But I wouldn't say that outright makes one application stronger than the other. It's the total picture.
All right. Thank you, Chris. All right, so we have another question. For the movement lawyering grant, does the organization have to be based in California? We're a national organization with our national office located in DC and a second location based in Oakland, California. So no, you do not have to be based in California for movement lawyering. The only priority area where you need to be based in California explicitly is capacity building. However, if you are an organization based outside of California, it's important to note that we will be looking for strong ties to the region and that all the funding and all the work will be used to support communities in California only. You're welcome. All right, any other questions? All right, cool. If I see any, I'll address them as we go. Cool. So I just want to list, and in the effort to be fully transparent, we want to talk about the additional considerations that we are going to be looking at when we look at these applications. So we want to make sure that the organizations that are applying, that are going to be the strongest applicants will be organizations that are contributing to the movement for social change, that are focusing on systemic and policy change, as well as some sort of measurable impact, have a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then also have an executive leadership board and staff that are representative of the communities that the organization serves. Is anyone else having a difficult time hearing me? I know that's a question that just came up. If you are, just let me know. All right. And these additional considerations, as I said, we'll walk through the application towards in a few slides, and you'll see how some of these questions do come up. This was just asked, so I'm glad we covered it. But yes, we will support organizations that are located outside of California, but they need to be working in support of Californians, and that will only be for movement lawyering or leadership pathway priorities. These organizations will need to indicate strong ties to California, and the communities that they intend to serve must be solely in California. It's a very simple timeline. We have about a little under 2 weeks for the application to close. Please make sure that you do apply by 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We will not have any technical assistance after 5 o'clock, i.e. me. And December 20th, we will be making those grant announcements to the folks. And then on the 23rd is we anticipate to have the grants awarded, but some of these timelines are subject to change outside of the application itself, especially with the awarding date. Cindy, did you say that you won't change the amount of the grant? So if we ask for 30, that's exactly what we will receive. Yes, so we don't intend to change the grant amount. So we're asking everyone to truly request what is needed as an organization. I think Oftentimes we have maximums and folks just ask for the maximums, which is perfectly fine too, if that's exactly what you're looking for and what you need. But in the assumption that you asked for $30,000 and your application is indeed chosen and approved, then you will receive $30,000. That is our intention at this point, to not make any changes to your grant amount request. You're welcome. All right, I'm going to fly through some eligibility questions. I think some folks may have emailed me directly already at our email, but I'll respond to these here as well. Simply put, only 501c3 organizations can apply. If you're not a 501c3 organization, you can apply through a fiscal sponsor who does have 501c3 status. 501c4s are not eligible to apply. Something around collaboratives and coalitions. We welcome collaboratives and coalitions to apply, but it's requested that one organization take the lead on behalf of the entire collaborative or the coalition and just describe that work in the application. The organization that does take that lead must have an independent 501c3 status to apply. I think it's we'll also note that there's a question around, can organizations applying on behalf of the collaborative submit a second application as their individual organization? And at this time, we will not be accepting that. So please be mindful of that when you apply. All right. So I think I already addressed this, but if you're a current grantee or a past grantee, this question is addressed in our FAQ page, so you all can see that there as well. But you know, we used to have a diversity pipeline grant program. There will be a way to request funding through one of our priority areas if you fit that mold. In terms of the legal fellowship program, that will continue, although we only have 2 year-long fellowships that we'll be providing instead of any summer fellowships at this time. We've already talked about if you are able to apply if you're an organization outside of California. And if you're a current grantee, of course, you can apply. I also want to state that being a current or past grantee does not, there's no priority given to that. We want to make sure that this fund is opening up spaces for new organizations to apply. We want to learn from the community, want to learn about what's going on. And for that reason, there is no actual, you know, priority or point system that's going to make one application stronger than the other simply from the fact that we've funded you in the past. All right, I don't see any questions, so let's go on. So just addressing a few simple common questions. Will the grants primarily be to support general operations or specific projects? So all our funding will be general operating support grants. We just ask that they be used to support the approved project / work listed in the grant application that you provide to us. Are we funding organizations who are looking to expand their services? Yes, we are. That's what the capacity building grants are for. As I said, they are limited to California-based organizations with budgets under $1 million and with at least one staff attorney, one attorney on staff. Some examples are like funding for strategic planning, development projects, board development, etc. And everyone's favorite question is, our needs fall under more than one of the listed priority areas. And how do we choose a category for application? So you can apply for more than one. Unfortunately, there's only one priority area. So that's why we would try to be transparent and provide you with all the information in terms of what we're looking for in each of those priority areas. I'm sure that many of you could apply for capacity building, and you're also an organization that's doing movement lowering work. So please think about where your application would fit strongest, and where you would be most competitive based off the work that your organization does at this time. All right. Cool. So I'm actually going to log in real quick and see how we can apply for this application. So give me a second. I'm going to do a stop share and click on the application page. So 1 second. All right, can we all see the application page? Let's look for a nod. Okay, all right. Thanks, Chris. All right, so when you click on the Legal Empowerment Fund page, which I'm sure many of you have clicked, and that's how you register for the informational webinar, I just want to let you know that if you scroll down, you'll see the full RFP and FAQ page. This is all embedded. There's 13 pages in here that you can kind of read through. It's basically what we're covering right now. And hopefully we're able to answer most of the questions in here. But of course, if you're not able to get the response you need from our FAQ page, that's what we're doing this webinar for. And also you can email us at lef@changelawyers.org. So to apply, you simply hover over the apply by November 17th, and it will take you to the California Change Lawyers webpage for submittable. And you will need to create an account. If you already have an account with us, or you've applied in the past, you can simply go have an account, sign in. If you do not, you will need to create an account in order to apply to the Legal Empowerment Fund. So I do have an account, so I'm actually going to click over here. And we are in. I would advise that you keep the RFP page open on a different page. That way you can kind of read the questions as you go, or kind of read some of the FAQs. I'm not going to go through each piece explicitly, but especially the first couple. We're really starting out with eligibility. We've reiterated this, that it's a 501c3 that can apply. So you are going to have to explain if you're a 501c3. If for some reason you're not, it will just say stop. So please make sure you pick correctly. You can either say yes, or you can say no, but I am fiscally sponsored. So if you say yes, you can skip this question. If you say no, please fill out the name of the fiscal sponsor and move down. We are asking for tax IDs. Again, if you're fiscally sponsored, you'll have to input the tax ID of the fiscal sponsor. Everything here is pretty straightforward. We'll need your mailing address. We would love to get the website for your organization, the first and last name of the individual applying on behalf of the organization, the applicant's email, your phone number if there's any need for us to give you a call. For example, we may have follow-up questions as we go through this process. So if we do have follow-up questions, we'll be reaching out to you via email to get answers to those. And yes, there will be, Jennifer, there will be reporting requirements. We will have those in the actual grant agreement if and when your organization is selected. But that's not something that'll be in the application right now. So as you go through, you'll see that we'll ask you if you received any funds from Change Lawyers, or when we used to be known as the California Bar Foundation. So if you can kind of fly back in your history and see if there's anything in there, we would love to know if we funded you in the past. Another question here is which region of the state would this funding primarily support? You can select more than one. If you're doing statewide work, let us know. If you're working on tribal land, let us know about that. It's a pretty comprehensive list. It's just to help us understand which part of the state you're working in. Here, we just need you to list your organization's total operating budget. Those commas, it messes the system up to show you something happened. Just keep the color. And again, if you're applying a grant, for example, this is where you would need to make simple questions. What year was your organization established?
You broke up for a second. Can you say the last thing you said again? No
okay,
comments.
I said, yeah, please don't use any commas. It messes up the system in here. And then also, this is a prime place to, if you're applying for capacity building, you would have to make sure that your budget is under $1 million, something to catch. And then simple questions here, just tell us about how many staff members you have, when your organization was established. And we would just like you to maybe copy paste your mission statement. There's a 1,000 word limit on the mission statement. So if you need to cut and paste or cut it down a little bit, please do that to make sure you meet that word limit requirement. So after you've gone through the basics of what we're asking is the fun part, and you get to choose which priority area under which you seek funding. I've reiterated the priority areas here, movement lowering, capacity building, and the fact that there's 2 tracks to the leadership pathway piece. Clicking on each one of these will prompt a separate set and a unique set of questions. And again, you can only choose one. So once you choose one of these, you'll get a new prompt of questions. So we'll kind of walk through these really quickly. I'll start with movement lowering. So when you click movement lowering, you're going to scroll down. You'll have to fill out how much of a grant amount you're requesting. We've talked about this. Again, please don't use commas. So you can say you're seeking $10,000. So the first question in our movement lowering is we are asking you to define movement lowering. How do you define movement lowering? All these questions will have about a 5,000 character limit. So I just want to reiterate that you do not have to use all 5,000 characters. Most applicants will not. So please write what you think gets the point across. So the first question would be, how do you define movement lowering? The second question under movement lowering is describe your current and or proposed movement lowering work, including your methodology, your goals, and your, so this is where we want you to talk about the work that you're doing, what you hope to achieve, and the thought process you have behind kind of bringing community and law together. The third question is, we want to know about the impact of your work. So if your movement lowering work were to be successful, what would change in 2 to 5 years? What impact would your organization make on the legal field over the next 2 to 5 years, or on the community over the next 2 to 5 years, if this funding was to push your work forward successfully? We're also asking if funded from any other sources for movement lowering. If you are, simple question, I've provided a format down here. So please just simply maybe write number 1 and the organization. That would be helpful to us, just kind of learn more about. The other question will be, please provide examples of how your organization creates systemic change, affects policy change, and or contributes to movements for social change. I talked about this earlier in the additional considerations. This question is asked pretty straightforwardly here. We're just trying to figure out, please provide us with those examples. And then moving down, we do have a pretty hefty DEI question. So we're asking you, what does DEI mean to you? And how does your organization practice DEI in your programming and your operations? So please address the multiple questions that are asked in here. So is your organization's leadership and staff reflective of the community that you're serving? And if so, please elaborate, tell us how. If your organization's leadership and staff are not reflective of the demographics of your clients or your community base, please talk about what steps your organization is taking to productively address this issue. And then we just have a little question at the end to tell us about any feedback you might have about the grant process. And that would be all the questions we have at this time for movement lowering. Again, if we have additional questions, we will reach out to you directly and get and ask for those. Does anybody have any questions specific to the movement lowering questions? Okay, cool. So I'm going to click on capacity building. And again, we're going to move down, same amount requested. And the first question is going to be, what are the areas of your organization that you are seeking to build capacity for and why? So pretty straightforward question. We're just trying to figure out how the funds will be used, where you're looking to expand and take your organization to the next level. The next question is, what's the niche that your organization fills in service to your community? So what we're looking for here is like, does your organization provide a unique service, be it demographic, geographic, or otherwise, that kind of sets you apart, and kind of talk about how this funding would expand on this work, expand on this space that perhaps some organization is not already doing this work, or you filled in a gap that was deeply needed by your community. Talk about that. Tell us about the work that you're doing, and tell us why it's important. The next question is around the impact. This is a question we're asking throughout. Where do you see your organization's legal work and impact on the community in 2 to 5 years from now? So please, again, tell us about, if this funding comes through to you, how would your expansion of your work provide a positive impact on the legal community and on the community as a whole over the course of the next couple of years? And the last two questions are questions we're asking, as I said, throughout. We want to know about the organization, examples of how your organization is creating systemic change, affecting policy change, and or contributing to movements for social change, and the DEI question. And then there's, once again, space for feedback. Does anyone have any questions specific to the capacity building piece? All right. So please note that movement lowering, again, is the maximum grant is 50,000 for 1 year, and capacity building is 50,000 for 1 year. And then we're going to click on leadership pathways, the general leadership track, which also has a maximum 1 year $50,000 grant. So the leadership pathway general track, the first question that comes up is, how do you define leadership in the legal field? So what gaps do you see that your program would fill? So we want you to tell us, what leadership means to you, what leadership means in this field, and then tell us about what's missing. We want to learn about what's missing, and then we want to learn about how your organization has programming that is going to fix this, is going to work to create positive change and build leadership in our communities, especially in the legal space. So the second question is, describe your current leadership program. So tell us about the program itself, the methodology that you use, the goals and the outcomes that you have in order to create a positive leadership program. I also know that there's organizations who have leadership programs that they've thought about, and now they want it to come to life, and they're looking for this funding to bring it to life. So if you don't have current programming, please describe the proposed leadership program that you would build with this funding. And again, list out your methodology, goals, and outcomes for that proposed work in leadership programming. And actually, the next three questions are pretty similar to what we've seen before. We want you to tell us about the future. We want you to tell us that if the leadership program were successful, please tell us, again, the impact that would have on the legal field over the next couple of years. Again, talk to us about your organization's examples on systemic change, policy work, and movements for social change. And then lastly, your organization, answer the questions around diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can see here. Any questions on this? All right, so the last, is a leadership, okay, there's a question. Is the Leadership Pathways grant program a good fit for law school pipeline programs, serving diverse law schools, diverse students who want to attend law school? So Ellen, I think that this is where folks who had previously gotten funding for the pipeline program, this is where I see them, I see those organizations applying, because if there's leadership components in that work, so if there are ways that you are building the next generation of leaders in our community, I'd say showcasing the ongoing, staying in touch with the students, making sure that they get to law school perhaps, or that providing them ongoing programming so that they're building out their leadership skills over time. I think that would be a good way to talk about how the pipeline program would be a good fit for a leadership program. You're welcome. Would it be a good fit for those, Shayna, would it be a good fit for those of us who are beginning legal apprenticeship programs so community members don't have to take on law school debt? So I'm actually, can you tell us more about that? Just a bit. I don't want to, let me see if I can I think you can unmute
Can you
yourself.
hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thanks, and I don't want to take up a ton of space. It's just hi, I'm Shauna, she, her pronouns. I'm the legal director at Communities for a Better Environment, and we've launched an initial launch of an apprenticeship program. Wonderful, Rachel. Love to connect with you on that. So we have one apprentice, but we really don't have resources. But this is a problem we've identified for the last 20 years, that barriers to our community members coming from environmental justice communities to becoming lawyers are not just like, what do you do once you've passed the bar to become an EJ lawyer? So that's one piece of it. And there are not a lot of spaces that provide funding for programs like this.
Yeah, so the way I hear it is, if you are building an apprenticeship program where folks are basically trying to become attorneys, then I think this might be a good fit, the general leadership track. But if you have folks who are currently able to take on like a fellowship piece, then I'm going to talk about the legal fellowship piece next. Maybe once they have passed the bar, or they're in their second or third year, technically, I'm not sure how that would look in the apprenticeship piece. Are we talking about legal apprenticeships that lead to getting licensed, or a legal apprenticeship post completion of law school?
So I'm just talking about the California process of reading for the bar as an apprentice. So people who have finished college are not going to law school.
Got it. Yeah, I think that would more fit into this general leadership track if you're able to talk about how this process takes on some of the inequities of law school, people who aren't able to do that, how you would build out that leadership component and how you would build them for success, considering you don't have too many folks participating. Why is that? How would you build out a system for this person to be successful and go on to be a successful attorney for the community? I think this is where this would probably be the best fit for that.
Yeah, I would just add, like, tell us the story, right? Like, how do you define leadership, and how does this apprenticeship program, build that person up or those folks up into leaders for the field, right? Issue expert leaders, perhaps. Just like just she said, we're learning. We plan to learn a lot through this process, but we just really see the importance of lifting up the leadership of voices of folks in the legal community who have not been heard traditionally, more than just being, from an underrepresented group and, just being, part of the legal community. We really want to support the leadership of those individuals. So that's really what we're looking to understand more about all of the applicants' programs. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Chris. All right, so I'm actually going to jump on to the legal fellowship track, and we still have time for Q&A. So I'm just going to get to this last piece, and then we'll open it up at the end. So the last one is leadership pathways. Last but not least, and again, this is more of a continuation of the current legal fellowship program that we have had running at California Change Lawyers. Although in the past we've had summer and year-long fellows. With this new legal empowerment fund, we're envisioning 2 year-long fellows at $80,000. So I will just say one caveat is, if you are applying to the leadership track under the legal fellow program, please just fill out 80,000 right here, because that is the amount that you will be getting. So if you're selected, this amount does not change. It's a flat amount. So please just make sure you do that. I reiterated that right here. All right. So for the fellowship program, again, this is bringing on someone who's either, close to completing law school and is going to work at your organization for a year, or is a recent or early career attorney. So we want to know what substantive area of law your legal fellow is going to focus on and why. Why is that area of law important? Why is that an area of law that we should be focused on? And again, we want you to describe the methodology, goals, and outcomes of this fellow's work. Amanda, I'm sorry. Amanda, you can, I'll just keep reading the questions out loud. But once you apply or you're able to apply, I'm basically just reading out the application directly. And if you still have, if there's something that's coming up on your end that you can't see, just let me know. So again, the first question is substantive area of law and why, and again, the methodology, goals, and outcomes of the fellow's work. What is your fellow going to be working on? Why is it important that the fellow is working in this space? Please tell us more about it. Chris just asked this question kind of in the chat, but have you hosted a legal fellow before? If you have, please describe in detail the programming, support, and structure that you had in place to create a successful fellowship program. And again, it's okay if you haven't. We just want to learn. If you have not hosted a fellow before, tell us what you propose. Tell us what you're proposing when it comes to programming, when it comes to support, and the structure that you envision so that you can create a successful fellowship experience for this individual. I'll just say that this is just an additional add that I love our fellowship work and I think it's an amazing experience. And there is structure and there is programming that folks are getting that I could only have wished to have gotten when I came out of law school. So it's really important that you talk about all the extra things that you're going to be doing to put this person in a space of success for this specific piece of law and for the community. The question is, do you have a person already identified as a potential fellow? This is something that we thought about considering in the past. It says my internet's unstable, so I'm going to wait 5 seconds. All right.
You're good.
So the next is, all right, perfect. Do you have a person already identified? So if yes, please indicate whether you have an existing relationship with this possible fellow. And also please provide a short bio of this individual. And it's okay if you haven't identified someone. I don't expect everyone to identify an individual that you're ready for to bring on. But we would love to know that if you haven't identified someone, describe your ideal candidate. Describe perhaps someone who has maybe some level of background in the area of law that you're thinking of bringing them on for, has had experience in these spaces. You're welcome to provide any sort of other important items such as geographical location or whatever you think makes a candidate ideal for your organization. So please talk about that in this piece. Also, the next question would be, please provide the bio of the supervisor who would be working most closely with the fellow. I'm assuming that could be some of you on this call, but it could also be maybe a staff attorney at your organization or somebody else. So we would love to learn more about that individual so that we can see possibly what type of supervisory or mentorship skills that they might have to support the fellow in the work that they're going to be doing. And then the last two questions, everyone's favorite at this point, I'm hoping, are around systemic change, policy change, movements of social change, and then of course the DEI question. So as I said, all these questions are limited to 5,000 characters. Please stay within that limit. You won't be able to submit if you go over, but you're not required to write 5,000 characters. And I'm encouraging you to not do that if DGIS are trying to take up the space. So, don't worry about that. Get your point across. We will hear you, and we're gonna really look forward to reading these applications. So that's all I have. That's actually the application. Once you submit, at the bottom, you just hit apply. and you're good to go. You should receive a general email saying you've applied. Don't worry if you haven't. If you're really worried that you applied and you didn't read it, you didn't get anything back, you can email lef@changelawyers.org, and I'd be happy to take a look. But please note that if you hit apply, it will go through. All right, I'm going to switch back over to our PowerPoint, so give me a second. Just so I can get to the slide that says Q&A. I know, I thought it'd be more exciting too, but it's not. All right, so we're gonna open it up. Obviously folks can unmute themselves and just let us know if you have any additional questions, and Chris and I will try to field these collectively. If you want to use an emoji to raise your hand or something, you can, but I'm just gonna, at this point, if you want to just unmute and ask a question, that's perfectly fine too.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm sorry I came a few minutes late. I wondered about the timing for the fellowship funding. So if we have a fantastic candidate in mind who would have to take the bar at the end of February, it looks like the funding starts in December. What are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so that's actually just, we're totally aware of that. And we know folks are taking the bar exam. You might have someone identified. We are going to work with organizations around the start time, and that's why I had said earlier, the timeline around when it actually starts. We'll announce the winners, or I don't want to say winners, we'll announce those folks who are going to be our grantee partners for this inaugural pilot year. But we'll work with each organization, especially around the legal fellowship piece, around when that actual start date would be. And traditionally, we've had folks start in the summer, and we usually spend the first couple of months helping identify possible candidates and working with organizations to help post the job itself, or the fellowship job itself. So not to worry. It's not going to run out we're not going to start you in December and expect all the funding to be done halfway through the fellows time.
Yeah, and I'll also add that even if you're considering supporting a current third-year law student, and that was where my question, if you've applied for Skadden or EJW, was kind of coming from, that we would even be okay with like a September 2022 start date, because we wanted to align a little bit more closely with those other national fellowship programs.
Leah, will you accept additional information? We're hoping that everything can just be fit into the application itself. We're trying to make it a simplified and streamlined process. I do anticipate that we'll have additional questions and that we will reach out to organizations individually as those additional questions come out. If for some reason we see that there are questions that we should seek from everyone, Submittable is very intuitive, it's very easy to use, and we'll be able to send you an additional form through the system directly to communicate any additional conversations or questions that we might have. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Hey, Andrew.
Yeah, so I am a part of a student-run organization at my law school. We're the Latinx Law Student Association. From what I understand is you are kind of saying that we might be able to fit into both of the capacity building and movement lawyering categories. It's kind of just depending on what we feel might be more appropriate.
Yeah, it's depending on the work that you're that you all are doing at your law school, yeah, you would have to choose which pathway or priority area makes most sense based on the work that you've done or where your organization is headed over the next couple of years, where it would make most sense to fund one of those spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Christine. Janine, based on your prior experience with your legal fellow program, do you have a sense of how many organizations will apply for a fellowship grant? You know, I'll be very honest, with the Legal Empowerment Fund, we're not sure how many applications we're going to get. We are, and I just don't know how folks are going to fit into which space that they want. I know that in the past, we've had a pretty competitive legal fellowship program. And you know, I think in the past when it was purely just a legal fellowship program, we've had anywhere between 16 and 20 applicants, but that was also when we had room for summer fellowships and folks could explicitly apply for summer fellowships. This is going to be only for a year-long fellowship. So if your organization has history doing this work or you feel confident that you can bring someone on for a year, I would encourage you to apply. All right, I will give us all another minute or so. Otherwise, you make me feel really good if we're really saying we're gonna be done early. But it's not a requirement. We're here to answer your questions. So, you know, if you have them, feel free to just unmute yourself. All right, I'm gonna call it quits. So thank you, everyone. Yes, thank you, Shayna. Thank you, everyone. Again, please email lef@changelawyers.org if you have questions. A lot of the stuff that we addressed here and brought up was also is on the RFP/FAQ page. But I'm hoping that it was a fruitful discussion, and I'm hoping that by seeing the application itself, if you haven't made an account yet, you're able to kind of get an idea and a window into the work that's going to take to apply. I just want to mention that, again, we are thankful for the work that you do. We're here to learn from you as organizations that support our community and support this work. And the application was made from a simple perspective on purpose. We know that you're all busy, but we also know that you're all very willing to talk about the work that you're doing, and we want to hear about it and we want to learn more. So if you have any questions, again, lef@changelawyers.org. No question is too small or too big. I will answer it. Just please make sure you apply by the deadline. That is the only thing I will not be able to fix, which is extending the deadline. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.